conversations this morning, we're talking a bit about what's happening at the Studley Park quarries. And to have that conversation with me this morning, I have Mr. Ashworth Jack, who is the chairman of the Studley Park Enterprise Limited. Good morning, sir.
Hey, good morning, and thank you for having me this morning. I know that this is not under the best of circumstances, but I think it is important for us to have this conversation.
Excellent, and so do I. Now, before we get into the details this morning, I want you to give to Begonians an update about what has been happening at the Studley Park quarries.
Well, I think this has been something that we have been discussing for quite a while. Over and over, we have been speaking about what is happening at Studley Park. In the last couple of months, in particular the last 2 or 3 weeks, there have been a situation where the Nordberg plant, which is the greatest producer of the 2mm, which is a French plant. There are a couple pieces of parts on that plant that went bad, that had to be brought in from France. There was a pump in particular for the gyro disc that produces the 2mm plant. That was very troublesome. We had about 2 or 3 different ones because they were not fitting. The plant is about 40 years old, and so you find that even some of the parts have now become obsolete, and therefore it's a trial and error in some of the cases. They send a number and then the plant, sometimes it doesn't fit. Then you have to do some tweaking, because even while we speak, that particular pump has been set in place. About a week and a half ago, we would have attempted to replace the 2 crushing jaws on the Cedar Rapid plant, which is the new of them, not a new plant, but newer of the plants, because the rate of crushing had reduced considerably because of the wear and tear on that plant. When the parts did come in this is an American plant. When the plant did come in, last Friday, they were about to set it in place. That was Tuesday or Friday. I think it was Friday. We had an impromptu visit from OSHA. OSHA then said to us, they want to see the chains that we're using, the block chain that we're using to put it in place. And then said, they are not seeing the 2024 stamp on the chain, and we can't put it up unless we get the stamp.
Okay.
Now that stamp, to have that, the approval on us, I have to go to Trinidad. There's no place in Tobago that does that, a certification stamp. So we right ahead, the staff went ahead attempting to get a certification stamp or to buy one that is certified. Then we will send those that we have to have certified. It means that plant is shut down altogether, and that was the producing plant. When we are in the process, that's not last Friday, the Friday before. When we're in the process of having that sent in place, OSHA checked us again and said they want to see the excavator we're using to put the part, to lift the part in place. When the excavator was checked, we were told that the excavator have to get a certification for 2024. Now, I'm not sure if any excavator in Tobago at all have had a certification for 2024 or even 2023 for that matter.
Okay.
So that was another hiccup. What we did is that we checked around and recognized the Division of Agriculture had the newest of the excavators in Tobago. We did contact the secretary, and after the conversation with the secretary, she asked her to write her, which we did on the same day. And she did speak with her people, the administrator. They did call us, and we made an arrangement for the excavator, which is for today, the 22nd. So that as we speak right now, that certified excavator with the certified chain has been put in place. That should be finished sometime today. But recognizing that there was an issue with the slowing down, the considerable slowing down of the production of especially the 2mm material to make the hot mix, I would have taken it upon myself to call the truckers to a meeting.
Okay.
And so we invited them to a meeting last Friday. And at that meeting, we attempted to explain to them the situation and ask them to bear with us for another week or 2 weeks maximum. We left the meeting with an appreciation for that they understood, because there was a number of things. Because one of the things that the truckers asked, why don't we import the 2mm? And we explained to them I would have asked the question, how many of you have bought sharp sand in the hardware? And everybody said they did. And I said, what is the price of the sharp sand in the hardware? It's $605. I said, if we had to buy the material for $605, immediately the price we're selling the material to will have to go up. And of course, then you'll hear another whole hullabaloo that the price have gone up by 50%, by 40%, as the case may be. And that same material a year ago in the hardware was $300, just over $350. It's now $605. That being said, as we speak right now, as I said, the excavator is there, the chain is there, we're putting that in place. We hope to have that done by today. And it is not a situation that I am comfortable with. I'm very, very uncomfortable with it. And it is not something that we sat on our hands and to allow to happen. And I also discovered yesterday, and that we had a number system that was introduced last week, Wednesday or Thursday, that I was not aware of.
Okay.
And the number system seemed to have created its own hiccup. I am a believer that you do not solve a problem that you don't have.
Okay.
And therefore there was no real need to put a number system in place when there was a camaraderie among the truckers that says, you first come, then you move in the line and stuff like that. But that will be discontinued as of today.
Okay.
And we are hoping that the repairs to the plant is completed today so that we can go back to our 5 or 6 weeks ago production.
Okay, and tell us, what was the percentage in lost in capacity that happened because of the issue at the Nordberg plant?
The Nordberg plant, in terms of sand production, is the greatest sand producer. So if you're not producing 2 millimeter sand at the Nordberg, your sand production will be reduced by about 85%.
Okay. Okay.
And the problem that the truckers are having is not 19 millimeters or 9.5. It is the way we call mixed aggregate, which is a mixture of the 19 millimeters, the 9.5, and the 2 millimeter. The 2 millimeter is the filling base in order for the material to hold when you cast it. And that is where our biggest problem lied in the last couple of months.
Okay.
And so if you have a 85% reduction in the production of one of those things, then you will have the problem that we have.
Right, and you said you called the truckers into a meeting last Friday, but the situation would have begun maybe 2 weeks ago.
It was before that. I'll be the first to admit. You see, I'm hearing
the question that I was about to ask is, at what point in the entire situation did it reach to the point where you felt like, okay, now is the time to speak to the truckers, as opposed to the onset of the issue escalating where communication could have been made to the general public?
Well, the thing about it is that it's not that we have ever I'm on this program, we communicate on a number of programs to the truckers, but it became acute. And people, you see, if you don't have all the information, then you speculate. And a lot of the truckers, it's either they knew or they speculated. And let me explain that. Prior to probably a year and a half or so, there were 2 major producers of aggregate in Tobago. It was Warner and it was Studley Park. So I'm hearing even a former secretary talking about crash and burn. I want to deal with that a little later. So when there was no material at Studley Park, then you could have gone to Warner. But now even Warner with their concrete plant have to buy from us. So even though we have a greater production level, the demand is even greater. And so any breakdown, any little thing whatsoever is felt across the industry because there is no alternative that is readily available to us in Tobago, except they bring the stuff in from Trinidad. Now, these plants are aged plants. We have been working assiduously to ensure that we purchase additional plants, but in the new day that we have of procurement, it is not as simple as going out and buy a plant. There's a whole process that must be followed. And at the same time, even to purchase some of the parts, if you're going away from but these parts are not $20 parts. These are some $250,000, $300,000 parts. And then you have to also follow the procurement procedure. So it slows down the acquisition of parts. Whereas a year ago, you could have just gone out and said, okay, there are a couple of suppliers, PRI, whoever, bring me this part, and that's it. Now you have to follow a whole process in order to purchase the same part that you could have purchased a year ago. Simple. So we're now looking at sole select, in only select, only a number of things that has been put in place.
Excellent. Well, we're going to take a brief break and we'll be back right after this.
Good morning, Tobago.
Good morning and welcome back to Good Morning Tobago. We have been chatting with Mr. Ashworth Jack. He is the chairman of the Spell Board. And we were talking about the Studley Park Quarries operations, and we have been talking about some issues that we have been seeing kind of unraveling a bit on social media in terms of the production and the production capacity that we are seeing coming out of the quarries. Now, we want to shift the gears a little bit to profitability of the Studley Park Enterprise Limited. Within the time period of 2022 to 2023 compared to previous years, what type of profits or losses have we seen?
Let me deal with production, and then we might be able to work it back.
Yeah.
Right? And I will deal with production, and I'm going to do a couple of things, because I also heard the secretary talk about a 400%, a former secretary under the last administration talk about that when they brought in Spell, there was a 400% increase in production. And I will just give you some figures, and one must judge for themselves. If you tell me prior to 2018, you had, or in 2018, you had a 400% increase over prior years. Let me give you the production figures, and then that might be able to speak for itself. In 2018, the production figures at Studley Park was 137,410. Right? In 2019, the production figures was 128,508. And he's saying that they had a 400% increase. So just imagine what he thinks was the production prior to 2018. Right? Because you're talking about just about 34 or so thousand per year, which I find questionable, but okay. But even if you say that, you're presiding over it anyway. In 2020, and I understand 2020 because 2020 was COVID.
Yeah.
So in 2020, the production went down to 105,545. In 2021, 57,960. In 2022, when it's coming out of COVID, it went back up to 105,456. And here we are in the period, this gentleman talking about crash and burn, that the production is the highest it has ever been. 202,646. Compare that to the second highest, which was in 2018, which is 134,410. Obviously, we have been doing something right. Coupled with that, we also had a situation, and sometimes I hear people, and I don't know if people don't understand that figures don't lie. When I went into Studley Park as chairman last April, we had a situation where there were some rental systems that we had to discontinue. One of them was the rental of a piece of equipment that cost to purchase $90,000. The compressor cost $90,000 to purchase. They were paying $45,000 a month rent for a $90,000 equipment. I wonder if the former secretary knows that. That under his watch, they were paying $45,000, 2 months rent would have purchased a new piece of equipment. We had a situation where scaffolding was being rented at $14,000 a month per lift. a lift of scaffolding will cost about $7,000 or $8,000 to purchase. So you could have purchased 2 lifts of scaffolding, which is what was being rented, 2 lifts, for the 1 month rent for 1 scaffolding. So we're talking about crash and burn. The previous administration bought a concrete batching plant, and I think it was admirable. But I wonder if they know that we have one of the very few wet concrete batching plants in the whole country. The concrete batching plants, you normally use your mix designs, you put it in the plant, it mixes it, and then it puts it in the truck. And when the truck on its way from the plant to the customer, the truck is designed to dispense water, and that is why the drum is always turning, because if the drum doesn't turn, it gets hard. And so that is at that point where the actual mixing takes place. We bought a wet concrete plant that the cost of maintenance, everything is probably twice the price of a dry concrete plant. And at the same time that was happening, they stopped the purchase or the sale, of all concrete to the public, saying they don't want to compete with the private sector. Also, there was no sale of hot mix to the public. We are in a situation where, you see, people talk because they believe that people don't have information, right? For the first time in the history of SPEL, that a major paving job has been done by SPEL. Although the government was repaving the highway, they were doing a number of pavings, all the roads, they were purchasing the hot mix from outside.
Right.
Or even the road in Friendship that required about 10 or 15,000, 10,000 or so tons of hot mix. All of that was produced by SPEL. While that is happening, sand is a major, the 2 millimeter sand is a major component of that. Then there's also the government major project, which is the airport. And that also takes the sand. Then all the...
So SPEL is going to be supplying
have
materials
been supplying because most of the projects are almost finished.
Right.
So
for
we
the
have been
airport
supplying
project I'm talking
the
about.
Airport, we have been supplying for the airport for quite a while. Since I got there,
Okay.
We have been supplying for the airport. That is how we were able to make US, because I negotiated the sale of our products to China Railway in US dollars.
Okay.
Right? And all this is happening. And remember, we have now been reduced from 2 suppliers of material, which was, as I said, Warner and us, to 1, which is just SPEL. So the demand have gone probably triple, but the supply have been reduced to 1 supplier instead of 2.
So moving forward, how do we create a situation where there's better communication with the stakeholders?
Okay, what we did is that last Friday, we agreed with the truckers that we will meet once a quarter. But there's a truckers group. And what have happened is that one of our engineers, and I've also joined the group, have asked to be joined to the group so that they can be kept abreast daily as to what is happening. And that has been going on for weeks.
Okay.
Right? So it's not that there's no communication. I'm saying I understand. Not for a minute truckers believe that we don't sympathize with the situation, because we understand that if you don't sell stuff, then you can't make money. You have your truck to pay for, you have a number of things. But we also have to understand that we're talking about machinery that will have it breakdowns and stuff like that. And it is not that you can just go out and buy 5 drawers and put them in storage, because 5 drawers might cost you $3 million, just one part. Right? But we are fully aware that the situation is not acceptable. But what is interesting about this is that this is not a situation that has persisted forever, because up to December last year, the turnaround time was 15 minutes.
Okay. My question moving forward, what type of preventative maintenance strategies are in place up there?
I'm glad you asked that. I'm glad you asked that.
And the quarries.
There are two things that I was really going to touch on: preventative maintenance, and let me start with that. One of the things that was painful when I got to Spell, when the new board took over, is that there was no preventative maintenance being done. We were doing breakdown maintenance, right? So when something breaks down, you run your bite. And I was told that a major part of the reason, I said it on one of the programs already, was because the bank, First National Bank, I'm not afraid to say who, First National Bank refused to give Spell foreign exchange to either pay a loan, and I'm going to get to that too, or to purchase stuff. So they only have $6,000 in order to buy a software
Right.
to set up the preventive maintenance schedule and to keep track of the stores and all that. And the bank refused, and that they are our bankers. They refused to give us that money. And so when the administration changed, and I came in April of last year, I started to negotiate some of the payments, especially China Railway, in US dollars. And that is how we were able to take care. Not only did they refuse to give us US dollars, but they refused to give the company a credit card. Yeah.
Was that because of the previous?
No, there are no problems. They had money in the account. The bank wrote us to say, we have to get a no objection letter from the Minister of Finance in order for us to study part together. Act number 40 is clear that there is a Tobago House of Assembly fund, just as there's a consolidated fund in general, and then there's a Secretary for Finance. But the bank doesn't want to hear that. As far as the bank is concerned, you talk to the Minister of Finance. If the Minister of Finance give you, and we'll never have that.
And how was that problem solved?
It's not solved.
Okay, so is it not possible to move to another bank?
That is explored, but you remember, it's not as simple as that, because there's also the situation where there's a division of finance involved. There are a number of things involved, but we have been exploring that possibility. But the foreign exchange problem for us with the bank is not as acute as it was, because now we have foreign exchange of our own in the bank, so it's just a matter of spending our own foreign exchange.
Okay.
But that being said, right, that was one of the problems. But that problem have been solved with, in large measure with a software and with realigning. We are in the
So the software is...
Yeah, it is purchased.
Okay.
And it is in use.
And how many preventative maintenance engineers are there at the plant?
No, well, you don't have really preventative maintenance engineers. You have engineers. And they have responsibility for, one for the plant, one for the... for equipment. So they are responsible for setting up the preventative maintenance schedule and working them. But one of the things that I found very disturbing, I still find disturbing, is that there was not an operation manual. When you work in a plant for that long, you know what is required every year, what is required every 6 months, and therefore, whether you have a new general manager, a new board, new anything, there should be an operational manual that anybody could look at in December of this year. This is what is required. We need these licenses, we need this, we need that. This is how you take down this is how you put up that. Those things did not exist in any comprehensive fashion. So that is another thing that is we are in the process of completing. So those matters, something like the chain, that had to be certified. If there was an operation manual, anybody who comes in, don't care when they come in, could just go to the operation manual for a specific time, a specific month, a specific piece of equipment, a specific spare part, and see, look, this is what is required of this. And therefore, we would not have those kind of trial and error situations. That has been put in place.
Excellent. Well, guys, we're going to take a quick break right here, and we'll be back with more conversation. See you soon.
It's a brand new morning.
Welcome back to Good Morning Tobago. We have been speaking with Mr. Ashworth Jack, who is the chairman for the Spell Board. If you're just joining us, that is the Studley Park Enterprise Limited. And we have been talking about their production capacity and their overall impact and input on the Tobago economy. Now, what we want to look at as we move forward with this discussion in terms of capacity, production, improvement, and maintenance is, where do you think the actual breakdown took place, and what would you have done differently?
As I said, a proper preventive maintenance schedule is one of them. There's a situation where if you understand how the plant works, and how we acquire parts, I was trying to allude to it earlier. To be able to stockpile all the parts that you know will go bad on a plant like those two plants will probably carry in the vicinity of $15-20 million. Just having stock. That is not something that a company could afford to just have lying down. So a lot of times, what you do is that when there's a breakdown, then they call to get the part. The preventative maintenance will allow you to look at the life expectancy of parts and stuff like that, and to do the ordering in a timely manner. Let me tell you how unique our situation is in Tobago. Because of the abrasion level of our rock, or how hard our rock is, a crusher or a jaw that will last in Trinidad, which is limestone, 2 years, will last us 5 months. Yeah. That's how hard our rock is. It's considered one of the hardest rocks in the world. Right? And that's why we're trying to look downstream instead of just sending it to build roads and sidewalks and stuff.
Right.
To make. And I don't know if you could remember this, because I know you're a young lady. I might not remember. They talk about the breakthrough factory by using our rock instead of just sending it to pave roads and stuff, to make brake shoes, to make emery boards, to make sandpaper, stuff like that. So we are back to trying to look to see where we can go downstream with some of these. So the cost of maintenance of that. But even before you get to the crushing, in Trinidad and most of the Caribbean, what you have is wet material. So you can just take an excavator, you just take the mountain down, and then you just pass it through a washing plant. So you take out the impure stuff, and then you sell it. In swell, it's a lot more costly. In that, one, you have to remove the overburden, or the trees, the topsoil, the rotten rock, all that. That have to be removed. And then you have to drill a hole into the rock, or holes into the rock. And then you have to blast that with dynamite. All this is cost. And then when that is done, you have to truck it to the plant. And then the plant have to crush it. According to if the rocks are too big, and if you don't have a demand for armored rock at the time, you use a rock pick to break it into smaller size. All these are very costly exercises.
Right. And that leads me to my next question. We are obviously not the only persons in the world that's doing it.
No, we are not.
So my question is, what are some of the more sustainable approaches to getting it done that's being done in some other parts of the world?
Well, what have happened is that, like, I was in Ghana the other day. I was in Ghana. And even they don't have the situation of hard material, not as hard as ours, but they're hard material. A lot of, when you go into those fields, a lot of the granite and things on the ground, just sitting there. And so you don't have to blast much. But one of the things that we have to do, and we have been attempting to do, is one, we know we have to blast. This is our advantage. We have the hardest material in this part of the world, one of the hardest in the world. We know we have to blast. But we also know that we cannot continue with a 40-year-old and probably a 25 to 30-year-old plant. And so we have been out looking at other people, see what they have been doing, and looking at prices. There's a report, the preliminary report was submitted last Wednesday for the purchase of new plants in order to retire one or both of the plants. We had more than likely one, and to increase our production. And of course, we also have a situation where some of the equipment have to be upgraded and or retired.
Right. Before you move any further, before we get into that particularly, the world itself is moving into more climate safe ways of doing things. So even as we look at purchasing new plants, have you considered a part of the requirement for a new plant to be something that is a bit more environmentally sustainable?
Okay, I'm glad you asked that, Ms. Felix. One of the things that we are looking at is how we do dust suppression. And a couple of weeks ago, we had someone, a company on the plant, looking to see how we can do our dust suppression system. And we have also discovered when we were out of the country that the dust that we have blowing away and flying away, we can use it right back in the concrete and asphalt production. It have never been done. We are now doing the testing. Our lab is testing it, and so that would be introduced. So yes, one of the things we're doing is that the dust suppression units that allows us the dust not to get into the environment.
Right.
That is important for us. Also, what we are doing is that we are recreating green spaces on the areas that have been affected.
Oh.
So that is an ongoing project. It has started a couple of months ago, and so we will be putting back in trees and a number of stuff that also helps in the filtration system, the natural filtration system.
So is there anyone within the board or within the organization whose speciality is environmental sustainability or just sustainability?
No, when we want a service, because it's not a service you want every day. When you want a service, you just purchase it. You want somebody to come and look at, we have someone come in and look at it. They say what needs to be done. And the EME also have that as a requirement. And so we have been working closely with the EME to get those things done.
Excellent. So let's look into actually purchasing a new plant.
Yeah.
What type of costs are we looking at, and what type of private sector investment are you pursuing for this?
We're not looking for private sector investment. We want to purchase a new plant. We're looking at all the major producers of plants around the world. So we looked at France, we're looking at the United States, we're looking at China. And, people will come and tell you, hey, don't buy a Chinese plant because Chinese plant not good. And that's not necessarily true. Because what we discovered is that a lot of the parts that we are purchasing from major companies, the parts are made in China, stamped with the company stamp, sent back to the company, and then and then we purchase it as though it is made in that company and in that country. But so we're looking at all the possibilities, and that is why it's not something you could just run into and just purchase it today. The cost involved in that is something that I have been touting for a while. If we're looking at Chinese plant, it will cost us about a quarter of what it will take us to buy plants from the other major suppliers. And that is another discovery we made when we were in Ghana. We went on some of the plants, we looked at them, and then when we inquired of the price, we were really surprised that it was costing us about between, in some cases, a quarter, in some cases, about 1/3 of the price that we will pay in other places. And so we were already negotiating with the Secretary for Finance and the Secretary for Works that we would want to borrow on our own volition, of course, in the vicinity of $50 or $60 million to purchase plants and equipment. And so that money would be able to take care of maybe 1 or 2 plants if we need 2 plants. It would be able to take care of modern equipment that we need in terms of excavators, loaders, stuff like that. And we are also looking at another piece of equipment as a downstream. I don't want to say anything about it as yet, okay, but it will be a downstream. So that will increase our profitability.
Okay, and as we round up our discussion this morning, we know that the world is moving towards artificial intelligence and mechanical automation. So in regards to the type of technologies that we can see coming out of SPEL, is it in the plans or a part of your vision to increase the technological advancement of the production capacity that you have up there at the quarry?
The new plants that we're looking at have some unique features. Those new plants will be able to tell you if you're overfeeding the plant. If there too much material going into the plant, you'll be able to slow down the production so that you don't have rocks sticking in the jaws. If the load is light, it speeds up. if you have two of the same plant, they will talk to each other. It will only cost for one person to operate it. There are a lot of technological advancement that will come with the new equipment. Even some of the new the rock trucks and stuff that we have to look at, we have very little use for a weighbridge, because even the excavator buckets and the loader buckets will tell you inside how much material is in the bucket. So it negates having to do additional spending for additional equipment like weighbridges and stuff like that. So yes, we are well aware, and we will be up to speed with the technology.
Are there any other areas that you believe technology is needed to boost the capacity?
Well, based on what we do, it is more productivity than anything else. The blasting, we look at if there are new technology in blasting, and our blasters are pretty good. I must admit that. But what we have been doing, because there seems to have been a lull on training people, so we had reintroduced training as an integral part of what we do. So our young men and women have been kept up to speed with the technology in terms of training on a regular basis. We have been sending a lot of our people to the UTT because they are the ones who are doing a lot of the in the industry. So we have had about 3 or 4 sets of people go out, and they will continue to be that. We're looking at how we can upgrade skilling for other training institutions that offer the same thing, so that we'll be kept abreast and that we don't make mistakes on the new equipment and stuff like that. And we also need to see and continue to look at what is the most modern ways of doing stuff. And Italy is one of the leaders in that area. And I know eventually when we tell people have to go to Italy, they're going to, where you want to go to Italy for? But it's to keep up with the modern trends, and to be able to continue to keep Tobago as the greatest little island in the world. You need to, our environment is always an extremely important part of that. And so yes, we will continue to keep abreast of international standards, first class standards, to ensure that we keep Tobago in this way, because we also have to start looking at another quarry.
Excellent. All right, guys. Well, that was it. You heard from the man himself, the chairman of the Studley Park Enterprise Limited, Mr. Ashworth Jack. Guys, again, thank you for joining us this morning. Thank you for liking, sharing, and commenting. And thank you for making Tobago Updates the #1 broadcaster on the island of Tobago. Again, thank you and have a great day.
New morning, rise up to a brand new dawn.